I'm happy to welcome you to my channel. I hope this story brings you something special and leaves a pleasant impression deep inside you. In a small town where the streetlights glowed only a little warmer than the stars, 3 people lived as if the days themselves had taught them gentleness. David, his wife Sarah, and their 4-year-old daughter Charlotte. They walked the riverbank until the wind cooled the cheeks and the water learned their names. On weekends they baked cinnamon rolls, the kitchen sweet with sugar and cinnamon and steam. When snow fell in large, soft flakes, they took photographs on the porch, catching each other half laughing, half shivering, as if the moment wanted to keep them. Life was simple in the way a good melody is simple. Morning coffee, a kiss on the cheek, preschool, work, a bedtime story, sleep. A life that did not waste itself on shouting, only the quiet light of everyday tenderness. One evening, David came home quieter than his footsteps. They ate in silence, mac and cheese, a tomato salad, and Charlotte, in an embroidered apron, wiped crumbs with grave importance and announced, "All clean." Sarah smiled, but the smile never reached his eyes. When their daughter fell asleep, David spoke, and his words entered the room like a draft from a long haul. "I'm going to another city," he said, "alone. The job is supposed to be better, but nothing is sure." "Why alone?" Sarah asked, folding her hands as if around an invisible book. "We're a family. We can manage anywhere together." "I need to figure things out," he answered. "It's only for a while. We'll see." He left 3 days later. On the platform, Sarah held Charlotte. The girl waved and called, "Daddy, bring me the sea." And David nodded with that helpless smile people wear when they are wrestling their own echo. The train pulled away, and on the glass a blurred smear of his palm remained, as if he had tried to hold on to a world that had shifted by a few inches and become ungraspable. At first he called often. He asked about Charlotte's drawings in her sleep, whether the dark still frightened her. He laughed when she reported solemn miracles. "Daddy, today I carried sunshine in my pocket." About Sarah he asked little, as if he feared his own questions. The calls thinned, once a week, then once in 2, then once a month. Then the long, complicated silence in which a heart learns the habits of listening to itself. At night, Sarah would wake to a phantom ring, stare into the dark, hear a neighbor beyond the wall turning pages, and drift back to the first evening they met. A friend's kitchen, David's black t-shirt, a fogged window, and a laugh that settled on her shoulders like a scarf. In the new city, David walked streets where wooden balconies leaned on iron brackets and trams sighed at the curves. He stepped almost by accident into a small cafe where long ago he had once taken shelter from the rain with his student crowd. The bell on the door chimed, and there she was, Celia. Once her name had meant everything. First, seriously. Last, hopelessly. Her hair was different. Her gaze was different. But the smile was the same. Part Eastern wistfulness, part stubborn joy that had survived the years. "Hi," she said. "You haven't changed. Only grown tired." "Hi," he answered. "Did you ever learn to make real coffee?" They laughed, spoke nonsense, kneading old, stiff feelings back to life. He did not tell her about Sarah right away. She did not tell him right away about Emily, a 6-year-old with wide eyes and a laugh that stuck to the heart like a burdock in July. Life, refusing preludes, carried the truth to them in a handful of evening sentences on a bench by the entrance. "Emily is yours," Celia said softly. "I argued with myself for years about your right to know, about whether it would break your life. But it seems your life cracked without me." That night David did not sleep. The world in which he had one daughter opened into a world of two. Geography changed. Not just money sent, Sunday calls, birthdays remembered, but the patient, daily work of love in two places at once. He would have to learn new colors, the calm color for Emily, the safe color for Charlotte, and find words that did not let either hand slip. Meanwhile, Sarah was learning to live without the hypothesis of us. She wrote herself a schedule and followed it like gravity. Preschool, work, housework, half an hour for herself. She brought the easel down from the top shelf, bought paints, enrolled in evening art classes. She ran at dawn when the city still dozed and the tires cut thin breaths in the wet asphalt. At night, she read Charlotte fairy tales and changed the endings. No girl went into the forest alone. A brave mother walked beside her with a flashlight. One day, at the playground, a man appeared whom she had not noticed before. Tall, a little awkward in a long coat, a roll of plans under his arm. He built houses and believed every city should have a place where a child can listen to the rain and not be afraid. His name was Thomas. His daughter, Lily, shared her shovel with Charlotte. Let her take the blue slide first, then taught her to braid friendship bracelets out of knotted grass. "Are you new here?" Sarah asked as their girls laughed beneath the rain canopy. "Not new, returned," Thomas said. "I'm restoring an old house in the center. It's meant to become a home, but for now it merely tolerates me." "A house that tolerates," Sarah smiled. "That's a good way to put it." "I think good houses do exactly that," he said. "They tolerate us until we learn patience with ourselves." He spoke quietly and looked at the world as if he could see beyond first glances. Sarah found herself listening not only to his words but to the pauses too, the way they left space for breath. No one rushed to rescue her. No one offered the bright bandage of time will heal. There was only that warm, human attention that melts the ice under the ribs. In the other city, David met Emily. She studied him with a seriousness that weighed each word. He brought her felt tips and did not force himself on her. They drew side by side, she, a house with a heart-shaped window. He, the sea arriving in small, patient waves. "Will you come tomorrow?" she asked. "Yes," he said, even when work was unsure. And he came, because he had promised. Celia did not push him toward decisions. She remembered too well his habit of hiding in work when the world demanded answers. At night they spoke, about the years lost, fear, decency, guilt. At last he told her about Sarah and Charlotte. Celia listened, warming her hands on a cup. When he finished, she said, "If you stay with us only because of Emily, don't. A child will feel it. But if your heart is here, stay, and we'll learn how to be honest." Honesty, it turned out, was painful. David called Sarah and told the truth, first without detail, then with it. On the other end, her breathing changed, but her voice remained even. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "I need time. You will always be Charlotte's dad. Don't disappear from her life." They agreed on a schedule, video calls, visits, presents, but more than anything else, presence. And presence is the thing by which a child knows she never has to earn love. Love is given like air. It simply is. Thomas entered Sarah's days tactfully. They took the children to a shadow theater, laughed over a stubborn cheesecake that refused to rise, planted lavender in a tub, so the flat smells of summer. He saw the tiredness in her hands and took the bags without speaking. He did not ask whether David would return. He asked whether Sarah had eaten. In autumn, David gathered himself and came to see Charlotte. He and Sarah sat at the same kitchen table with the same mugs. "I've found Celia," he said. We have a daughter, Emily. I didn't know. I want to be there for them. I'm not asking you to forgive everything. I'm asking you to let me not vanish for Charlotte." "Charlotte is your daughter and always will be," Sarah answered. "We will live this through like adults. I, too, have someone to walk forward with." He lifted his eyes and for the first time noticed a small bundle of lavender in the vase that had not been there before. Another scent had moved into this home, the scent of someone who did not try to outshout silence. On the playground, Charlotte and Lily built a sand bridge with 2 arches. "So you can walk in from both sides," Charlotte explained. Thomas smiled, and as if in passing said to Sarah, "Some bridges aren't for running away. They're for coming back when you're ready to talk." Sarah nodded. She had already learned to return to conversations with herself without fearing the truth. Months passed. David learned train timetables and distances, the locations of cheap hotels near parks with swings. He learned to read bedtime stories in 2 voices over video. He invented joint secret missions for Charlotte and Emily, to draw each other a postcard and send it through him, to teach each other a favorite song, to trade buttons from elevators no one had seen. Celia remained cautious. She knew love is not a train that arrives on schedule, but a river that changes its course after every storm. They began small. Morning coffees, shared errands for grains and milk, evenings with cartoons on the couch where Emily curled under a blanket and fell asleep holding her father's sleeve. One night Celia woke and saw David adjusting Emily's coverlet, and she realized, for the first time in years, her house was quiet. Sarah and Thomas, meanwhile, spoke not about David but about plans. A tiny ground floor workshop where children could paint plaster fish, and adults drink tea and discuss anything except the news. A city playground with canopies that sing when it rains, posters hand-drawn in Sarah's clean, sure line. In the evenings, they stood side by side at the sink, washing dishes in a silence that weighed more than promises. One day, David found the courage to tell Charlotte about Emily. He feared betrayal would pass over the child like a shadow, but she listened gravely, purple felt tip in hand. "I have another daughter," he said. "She is kind. I'd like you to meet," Charlotte thought, drew 2 houses and a bridge between them. "Okay," she said. "Only let's bake a cake so everyone laughs." The meeting took place by the park fountain. At first the girls studied each other like mirrors reflecting different seasons. Then they laughed in the same breath, and the bridge drawn in purple became real. They ran to the carousel, shared apples, and invented rules for a game no adult would ever understand. That evening, Sarah and Celia spoke alone for the first time. They did not try to please each other. They simply held the balance of their own dignity. "We are both mothers," Celia said, "and we both need our girls not to fear the world." "Yes," Sarah replied, "and to know that neither of us will disappear." Life filled with concreteness again. Who collects from preschool? Who takes whom to the doctor? Who has art today? And who has music? In that concreteness, each found a place for warmth. Celia allowed herself to laugh louder, Sarah to sleep deeper, David to be silent more honestly, Thomas to be there invisibly and reliably, like the support beneath a staircase you cannot see and cannot climb without. A year later, David asked Celia to marry him. No grand scene in a restaurant. He came in the morning with flowers and said, "I don't want 'we'll see' anymore. I want it together if you do too." "Yes," she answered. "But together means you remember there's already a bridge to where Charlotte lives. We don't build joy out of someone else's hurt." "I know," he said, and smiled as he had in that student cafe. The wedding was intimate. Emily's laughter, a slightly lopsided cake, wedding photographs with a tram in the background. That same summer, Thomas invited Sarah and Charlotte to the sea. They sat on the shore listening to the waves. "I won't promise the world will grow simple," he said, "but I won't leave when it grows hard." "I'm not looking for a simple world," Sarah answered. "I'm looking for someone unafraid of my truth." "Then it's the two of us," he said. In autumn, they moved into the house Thomas had been restoring. The hall smelled of fresh paint and apples. A jar of lavender stood on the sill. Charlotte fell asleep hugging a new soft toy, a starfish with embroidered eyes. With a cup of tea in her hands, Sarah thought, "Fear is a bridge, too. You can cross it if you know someone is waiting on the far side." One cold morning, David called. "Celia and I are having a baby," he said. "I wanted you to hear it from me first." "Congratulations," Sarah answered, and she meant it. Charlotte drew another bridge, now with 3 arches. "So the baby can cross too," she explained. Years drifted forward. New holidays appeared, new photos on the fridge, new schedules pinned to the door. The most important thing did not pass: the desire to hear one another. David brought Emily and the baby to Charlotte's birthdays. Thomas fixed a shelf in Celia's apartment. Sarah helped with costumes for a school play in the other city, and sometimes sent parcels of gingerbread. They learned to be a family not by form but by substance. In the quiet evenings, Sarah and David sometimes spoke alone. No accusations, no sugared nostalgia. 2 people who had once held each other's hand and now held the hands of children who shared much and had much of their own. They learned to let go, not as defeat, but as a form of love. The finale arrived not with fanfare but with the fragrance of apple pie. David and Celia marked a small family holiday, their wedding anniversary, and invited Sarah and Charlotte, Thomas and Lily. The baby in the stroller laughed toothlessly. There was not a single spare chair at the table. Every seat was earned by presents. Thomas raised a glass of lemonade, to honesty. "It hurts, but it is the only thing that points one way." "Toward home," Celia added. That evening, after the guests had gone, David stepped onto the balcony. The city breathed evenly. He texted Sarah, "Thank you." She answered, "You too. Let's keep our bridges." He returned inside. Celia read a story to Emily. The baby snuffled beside her, a small warm bundle. David sat down, laid his palm on Celia's shoulder, and felt how, in this simple quiet, the bridge had finally become a road. And Sarah sat on the windowsill of her own home, which smelled of lavender and paint. Beyond the wall, Thomas sketched something in a notebook. Charlotte slept. Sarah opened the window and heard the rain rustle on the canopies, the very ones Thomas had designed so that children would not be afraid of the sky. She smiled and whispered, "I'm home. The story does not end. It has simply learned to stand on its own feet, as a child does, sometimes falling, sometimes laughing, always getting up. It holds 2 houses, 2 cities, 2 women, 2 men, and 2 girls. And they have all learned the main thing. Happiness is not stolen. Happiness is built. Bridges are not for dividing shores. They are for joining them." A few years later, a new bench appeared in the same park with a small plaque. "For those who build bridges." The wording was Charlotte's idea. Thomas made it real. People came to sit, to confess, to reconcile. New scratches kept appearing on the plaque. Initials of those who chose conversation over pride, the future over the past. Nearby, the canopy stood and rain played its endless plays, and children laughed as if the whole world still lay ahead.